How's it going, everyone? David from dodmedia. Today I'm going to be showing you 3 simple ways to get your audio sounding way better. Okay, so what you tend to see with a lot of filmmakers, especially when they're starting out, is that they put a lot of their focus, a lot of their time into getting really pretty shots, really pretty visuals, but the audio just kind of comes afterwards. It's not their primary goal to get really good audio. But the thing is, there have been studies and experiments that have shown that people will watch a video with fantastic image quality and really crap sound quality and lose interest, lose focus, stop watching way sooner than anyone who is watching a video with a really crap image but very good audio quality. So our willingness to ignore bad picture quality for good audio, it's not a vice versa relationship. So the bottom line is, it doesn't matter if you filmed with the best camera that's out there. If you have crap audio, you will lose your audience's attention. So what can you do to avoid that? 3 simple steps. Step number 1, stop using the onboard mic that's on your camera. A lot of people who start out with vlogging are doing it on their phones, they're doing it on little cameras like the Sony cameras, and they're just using the onboard microphone, and it sounds terrible because it's a microphone that picks up everything. I mean, looking at the 6D here, it's literally those tiny 3 little holes. That's your microphone, that's your onboard mic. And it's not directional, sure, it's not necessarily going to capture very much right behind it, but it's just everything. And unless you're speaking this close to it, you're going to get terrible audio. And so by using an external microphone, you'll get something that's more directional, something that filters out all of the ambient noise around you, all of the unwanted noise around you, and just focuses more on what's directly in front of that microphone. So there's a few options. You could either get a little lavalier mic that you clip onto your shirt or your t-shirt or whatever, and that way that is right underneath your chin there, it's just next to your chest, and that will pick up a very clean audio feed. The problem with those is that you tend to either need an external recorder like a Zoom H1, or you need to have a wireless system that will link it to your camera, because you don't want to have a cable trailing from you to the camera. That's an accident waiting to happen. You're going to pull the jack on an angle and it's going to snap inside your camera. It's happened to so many people. It will continue to happen to so many people. And it's just something that you want to avoid doing. You don't want to damage your gear because of a silly mistake. So unless you have some kind of wireless system or an external recorder, a little lavalier mic is not ideal. It's great for interviews if they're sat down and they're not moving. But if you're on the go and you're vlogging and that kind of thing, it's not ideal. So one option, which is not a very directional microphone, it's a cardioid pattern, which means that it's going to pick up most of what's in front of it, definitely directly in front of it, some on the side, and very little on the back. And that is the Rode Video Micro microphone. This thing is just absolutely teeny tiny. That's the size of my fist, and that's that with the dead cat on. So while this is a cardioid pattern microphone, your advantage here is that it's tiny. It's just so minuscule. And the dead cat is a ridiculous amount of additional space that this thing takes. If we pull that off, that's how small this microphone is. That is minuscule. The other advantage of this microphone is that it doesn't need any batteries. It is a condenser microphone, but it gets all of its power through the mini jack that goes straight into your microphone port. So you don't need to worry about having to turn it on. You don't need to worry about any batteries running out or that kind of thing. So this is a great microphone if you're vlogging, and especially on a wide lens like I am. On the 16mm by Sigma, it's the equivalent of 24mm on a full frame camera. I'm about 1.5 feet away from the lens right now. So this microphone would be plenty. It would be perfect because it's close enough to the source of the sound to actually pick it up in good quality without having to merge in all of the surrounding ambient noise. A second option, if you want something that's a little bit more focused, a little bit more tuned in on one source of sound, would be to go for a shotgun microphone option. Now, you could go for a Rode Video Mic Pro if you want to spend an absolute fortune, and they're very good microphones, and you have the benefit of it turning on and off automatically with the camera, so you don't have to worry about forgetting to turn it on for a shoot or forgetting to turn it off and draining out the battery. But it's expensive. expensive. So one option that I've not actually tried myself, but I've seen being talked about a lot by other YouTubers, is the Takstar SGC598. Max Urev did a great comparison of the actual VideoMic Pro from Rode and the Takstar mic side by side, comparing the audio, and the Takstar was a little bit brighter. It didn't have as much bass to it as the Rode did, but that is something that you can actually boost back up in post-production in an equalization. You can bring some of that bass and mid back into it. So for a microphone that costs about $30, $40, that's pretty amazing. So essentially just stopping using the onboard microphone, the tiny little holes there, and switching to an external microphone, even if it's the VideoMic Pro on an iPhone, it doesn't matter. You're just gonna get such a better audio quality out of it, which is gonna make your viewers keep their attention on you for far longer. Okay, step 2, get the microphone off the camera and closer to your mouth or source of sound. In movie sets, you've always got the sound guy or girl who's holding the boom pole, and that big boom pole is really long, and then there's a microphone at the end of it that's pointing down, really not far from the actors who are performing. And the reason for that is that the camera is very far away from the actors, or tends to be, whereas the microphone needs to be as close to the source of sound as possible to be able to get the most crisp audio quality as they can, and as little of the sound noise, right, and as little of the set noise as they can. And so while I'm shooting on a very wide angle lens right now, the microphone doesn't need to be that far from the camera. If I were shooting on, say, a 50mm on a crop sensor camera, so roughly 75mm, that's a portrait focal length. You need to be about 2 meters, maybe 2, maybe even 3 meters away from the camera to get the kind of framing where it's not just like that close on your face and it's really uncomfortable for the viewer. But if your camera is 2-3 meters away from you, that's too far for the microphone. Even if it's a shotgun microphone, it's going to be picking up some of the reverberation from your voice that's bouncing off the walls, bouncing back towards you, and it's gonna go back to the initial problem of shooting on the little onboard microphone. So I did a quick review of the little small rig friction arm, and that's exactly what I'm using. I don't have the Takstar that I mentioned, but I have the old Rode VideoMic, which is a shotgun mic. And I have that on the little small rig arm, and it's pointed down at me, down at my mouth, so that it's not in the frame. It's literally just there. So, you know, a couple of centimeters and it would be in frame. But what the magic arm or the friction arm is allowing me to do is actually have it closer to my mouth than if it was on board the camera. So even that little half foot is helpful, because the closer you are to the source of the sound, the better. But if, as I said, you're shooting on a longer focal length, well then you might want to look at trying to introduce some kind of boom system. That could be a light stand that has one of these friction arms and a clamp on it, and that way your microphone is just off frame, offset, pointing down at your mouth. And it doesn't matter how far your camera is, as long as you can see yourself, as long as you can see your face and not the microphone, then you're gonna get crisp audio. You're just gonna need to get a long cable that's gonna extend that little micro jack from the microphone to your camera, or use an external recorder so you don't have cables running around the place between microphone and camera. But nonetheless, it'll allow you to have your camera where you need your camera to be and still get good audio. Now, depending on which camera you're using, you may actually want to use an external recorder. The Sony cameras have fantastic preamps in them, which means that the audio signal that's coming from the microphone is going into the camera and it's being processed very nicely. It's not adding a load of gain to it. It's actually taking that signal and keeping it fairly clean. Whereas a camera like the 6D Mark I has a terrible preamp in it. The 7D, the 6D, the 5D, they all had absolutely terrible preamps. I think the 5D Mark III was slightly better. It's still not quite as good as the Sony cameras with the Lumix cameras, the GH4, GH5. And this thing, if I plugged a microphone in this, it wouldn't matter how good the microphone was. It wouldn't matter if it was a Rode VideoMic Pro, it would still sound horrible. So when I do shoot interviews with this, for example, apart from the hyperlapse tutorial I did a month ago, I always use an external recorder. I always use my little Zoom H1, which can record very clean audio. The preamp in it is, I mean, it's an audio recorder. You'd expect the preamp to be pretty good. So that's another thing to bear in mind, is what camera are you using? Okay, and the final step, step 3, is to start using a little bit more processing in post-production. And I'm gonna show you exactly how I do this. This is what I do for every single tutorial. This is what I've done so that you hear this audio now as it is. And we're gonna jump into Premiere Pro and I'm gonna show you exactly how you do this. All right, here's my clip straight out of the camera, dumped on a timeline. Nothing has been done to it yet in terms of gain, in terms of audio effects, anything like that, any mixing, nothing. This is just straight out of the camera. Now, if we play this, how's it going everyone? David from dodmedia. Today, I'm gonna be showing you that, I mean, it sounds a little bit thin. You can see that, you know, the highest it's coming is probably about minus 12 decibels. That's kind of, that's not really quite high enough. We'd like that to be just a little bit higher. So the first thing that I tend to do is to hit G on the keyboard just to look at the gain. Now, the problem is here I'm clapping at the end, which is gonna completely offset that. So I'm just gonna cut there, and that way this clip here isn't gonna take into consideration that clap. Now if I hit G, you can see the peak amplitude is actually minus 9.4 decibels. That's pretty low. So I'm just gonna give this a boost of maybe, let's say 5 decibels. Cool, and that way that should already sound a little bit better. You'll be able to hear it a bit better. How's it going everyone? But the thing is, there's no effects, there's no EQ on this. So what I do is I come over to audio, the audio tab up there, and then stroll along to audio track mixer. Make sure it's audio track mixer, not audio clip mixer. Audio clip mixer is actually gonna affect your original clips. I don't wanna do that. I wanna leave my original clips as they are, and then just affect them within the software. So audio track mixer, and if you haven't seen that big thing there, then click that little arrow there which says show hide effects and sends, drop that down and bam. Now, this is essentially an effect rack for every single track. So this is all of the effects you can put on track 1, all of the effects you can put on track 2, track 3, and master. And so what do you typically want with an audio mix? You typically want a little bit of EQ. So let's just grab the parametric equalizer. You typically want a little bit of compression. So let's grab the tube modeled compressor. You typically want maybe a little bit of click reduction because if you're like me and you tend to just click a lot in your mouth when you're talking from like little gross bits of saliva in your mouth, then this will just help remove those little kind of blemishes in your audio. And finally, what you want to have there is a limiter, a hard limiter, because you don't want your audio with all of these gaining so much that they're actually peaking and going into distortion there, and when you then export that, it's going to sound terrible. So a hard limiter will actually put a ceiling on just how high that audio can go. Okay, now without having tweaked anything, it's not going to sound great because there's no presets set for the parametric EQ, which means that it's basically not doing anything. There's no preset set for the tube modeler, which means it's probably doing the wrong thing. And the hard limiter isn't limiting nearly hard enough. So let's open up the parametric EQ because it's at the top and work our way down. You double click on it, it opens this up. I tend to come down to vocal enhancer, and because I have a baritone voice, I just tend to grab this node 4 here and boost it up a tiny bit there in the kind of, you know, 2000 hertz section range, just because that's the cadence of my voice there that makes that really pop. And this is going to differ for every single voice that you record. But if you're generally recording your own voice, you can learn quite quickly what kind of EQ setup matches your voice to bring the best out of it. And it's quite simple. You just play around with it and just listen to what sounds best. A good way to do that is just hit this loop button here. If you haven't got it, just look at the plus there and you'll see the loop button is there, and you can just drag it down onto this area so that you have it to access quickly. Now, if you have that activated, when you press play, this will play through, and when it gets to the end, to the very last clip that's on your timeline, it'll go back to the beginning and start playing again. That's a great way of listening to your audio and tweaking it on the go without having to kind of press pause, tweak, and then play, and then pause, and then tweak. You can just tweak it as you're going, and that's what's great with Premiere Pro and you know, Final Cut, is that they're powerful enough now that you can actually do stuff live to your footage and to your audio. Cool. Now, next, the tube modeled compressor. Again, presets, drop it down. voiceover. That's what I tend to do. And then the output gain, I tend to just add maybe 5 decibels on top of that, or 4 decibels even. So I make the output gain 8 decibels. Done. If you need to, if you've got a lot of variation between loud noise and very quiet noise when you're talking, if you're one of those people that just projects their voice unevenly while they're talking, so you've got really loud sections, really quiet sections, you can just drag this down a little bit to drop that threshold, and that way it will equalize between the lower sounds, by the quieter sounds I mean, and the louder sounds, so that they're slightly more in the middle. Okay, and then moving on, the automatic click remover, just make that a light reduction, that's fine. And then the hard limiter, this one, the maximum amplitude, I don't want it to be -0.1 because that's not going to be enough, that's not going to kick in enough. So I'm just going to make that -1.5. That way it's never going to reach a higher amplitude than -1.5 decibels, which is perfect. And now if I play this, how's it going everyone? David from dodmedia. Today I'm going to be showing you, you can see the levels are perfect, they're just below 0. That's just what you want. You can hear that clap at the end isn't overwhelming, it's not blinding out, it's not deafening out, I should say, all of the other audio. It's perfect. And so just like that, anything that you place on this track here is going to be affected by this effects rack. That means that if you're vlogging and you're shooting in loads of different locations and you're on the go and you have the microphone constantly kind of same distance from your mouth, but you're in different settings, placing all of those on here is going to mean minimal tweaking between all of the various clips. And so that's what I tend to do. I create one effects rack, which is just for voiceover. And then I'd put my B-roll on, you know, track 2 or track 3 or track 4, or any overlays, any photos, any graphics, anything like that that I would feature in my vlogs or in my tutorials. I would then overlay on top of that. The music I'd put on tracks below it, and I would drop that gain down. And it's a bit of a pain to have to go through and do that every single time, which is why actually I copy the project file from one project to the next, from one vlog to the next, and then just get rid of all of the media so that the sequence is already set up with this effects track, and that way all I have to do is drop my clips in there and it's ready and it sounds great, and all I do is tweak the gain and it's good to go. So there you go. I hope you found this very useful. Give it a thumbs up if you liked what you saw in this video. Hit that subscribe button to get more videos from me at dodmedia. Hit the little bell there to get notified when I release a new one. Leave a comment in the comments section if you have any questions, anything to say, any advice on how you do your audio setup for vlogs or for interviews or for anything. If I think it's really helpful, you'll probably win something from my store, like a preset or a LUT or that kind of thing. And I hope this video helps you get cleaner, better audio for your productions so that your viewers just feel like they want to watch it that little bit longer. All right, cheers. See you in the next video.